3, 2, 1.
Welcome in, Husker Extra Podcast. It's Parker and Chris this week. Our esteemed colleague, Mr. Sipple, is taking the week off, a well-deserved week off. So Parker and I are holding down the fort here. We'll talk a little football today. We'll talk a lot of baseball today. Regional sites were announced today, Nebraska not among those. We'll talk a little hoops. We'll kind of hit on everything, even though it's kind of a slow part of the calendar. But as always, let's just maybe get right into it with football. Like we said, it's quiet right now, but we know that the noise is coming next month with official visits and those sorts of things. And Nebraska with a 2022 class needs to get filled out.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Well, I mean, it's quiet right now. There's just not a whole lot that's going on. I mean, we've spent the week sort of going positionally through the defense, what we learned this spring. Going to do a sort of updated projected depth chart over the weekend. But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot going on. It's sort of like you say, Baz, it's like the calm before the storm, because on June 1st, recruiting dead period ends for the first time since mid-March. And basically all hell is going to break loose. There's going to be official visitors. There's going to be unofficial visitors. The NCAA has sort of green-lighted this, like, any player on an unofficial visit can do a private 1-hour workout with the coaching staff, because they've had so little in-person evaluation time over the past year and a half. So you're going to have kids that staffs really want coming to campus on visits and committing and all that. And then you're going to have guys who maybe you want to learn more about come in and work out and maybe earn an offer or maybe not. It's just going to be kind of all out. It's like Ryan Held said during spring ball. Said, I told my wife I'll see her in a month, in July, basically after that. So that's all coming. We know of about a dozen official visitors Nebraska has on the books right now. But for now, it's kind of quiet outside of kids getting those visits lined up and coaching staffs trying to figure out, when to have the big groups of visitors on campus.
It's funny because it's quiet now, and then June's going to be, like you say, just an absolute madhouse, and then July is just going to be like really quiet again because everybody's going to go on vacation and like actually get out and do something with their lives for the first time in 2 years. So it will be like, it'll be hilarious because there'll be basketball recruits on campus, football recruits, every baseball, volleyball, like they'll all probably flying on the same flights into Lincoln, and like Nebraska's just going to have the fleet of SUVs lined up at the airport to take the kids over to the football stadium or Pinnacle Bank or Haymarket Park. So, yeah, it's coming hot and heavy, and it's true for football. It's true for basketball. We know they're going to have a lot of official visitors. They've already got a few lined up. Isaac Trout being one of those. The kid
I've heard of him.
Yeah, you may have heard of him. He's among a group, and I don't know the exact number, but it's growing to double digits pretty quickly.
Yep.
I think so. It's going to be that. It's that time of year, and it's critical, obviously, because you actually get to see kids again, of course. But Nebraska, for football, they don't have a lot of signees for that 2022 class yet. It's obviously still very early. It's the spring of 2021, but it's time to start making headway there, and we'll see a lot of that here, basically in 2 weeks, I suppose.
It's interesting because they started to kind of get it rolling a little bit with Ernest Hausman from Columbus. The linebacker was the first one, and then Victor Jones Jr., the receiver from Florida, who they've known about forever, jumped on board. And then once the NCAA sort of like said officially that the dead period was going to end, the number of commits has really dropped off, I think, all over college football. And that's because – I think it goes both ways. It's because players know that they're going to be able to get to go see campuses. And so they're like, it's close enough to June 1st. I might as well just wait and go see schools. And then I think schools are doing that too, where it's like, if you're not absolutely sure about a kid, like, why not just basically slow play it until they get to come to campus and you can see them for yourselves, especially now that you can work kids out. It just makes a lot of sense. So I think you've seen, I think the numbers reflect this nationally, a pretty significant dip in the number of kids that have committed in the past few weeks. But man, it's going to explode in June. I don't think then, so you've got this sort of like the water building up behind the dam. And once it starts to go in June, then you're going to get kids that feel like, okay, I need my spot in a class.
Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be a rush all over the place. We can talk about this briefly. One of the spots where that timing is really interesting with Nebraska is at quarterback, because MJ Morris was on campus from Atlanta for the spring game, loved it. Also is pretty heavily considering Georgia Tech and NC State. I don't know if you could pick a favorite between those, but Nebraska's got a couple other quarterbacks that it also likes. Richard Torres from San Antonio and AJ Bianco from Honolulu, sort of chief among them. Both those guys want to get to campus in June. I think Torres is set for the first week, and then I'm not sure Bianco, at some point probably that month. And so, like, the question is, neither of those guys have been to campus. The staff hasn't been able to evaluate either of those players in person. They haven't been able to evaluate Morris in person either, but at least he's been to Lincoln, whereas the other two haven't. So the question is, like, MJ Morris told me right after the spring game that he thought he'd decide in mid-May. Now it's looking more like late May or maybe into June after his school year ends. They're in the baseball playoffs. All this stuff is going on.
Yeah.
But the question there is, like, he's sort of in the lead right now for the, like, just timing wise, for the simple fact that he's been to campus, he knows what it looks like. But, if it goes through the first weekend of June, or if Nebraska pushes it into June, in terms of, being adamant that they want to be able to evaluate one or all three of those guys in person before they accept a commitment, it's going to get interesting pretty fast. So that's, like, just one example out of, I'm sure, hundreds around the country of, like, kids that, like, coaching staffs really like Nebraska's policy. Mario Verduzco's policy has always been that if they offer a quarterback, the offer is committable right now, tomorrow, whenever, until there's one in the class. That might be the case right now, but I think the ideal for them is probably seeing these guys in person in a couple of weeks. So it's you're sort of like teetering on the edge where there's not a ton happening right now, but I think the wheels are really turning behind the scenes at all schools and all positions. And then it's going to get pretty nutty, I think, when the calendar turns.
Yeah. Well, and quarterback especially, right? Like, you can't afford to miss.
Right.
It's too important. And especially with the situation Nebraska is going to be in next year, basically, assuming Adrian Martinez doesn't come back for another year, with two pretty unproven guys behind him, and Heinrich Harburg and Logan Smothers. So yeah, you have to get that right. You have to be able to see those guys. And of course you want to see guys at every position. You want to see how a linebacker works in space, or how a defensive back can move his hips and get going and change direction. But quarterback is just so important. And we know how important it is to Nebraska's offense. So yeah, being able to get those guys on campus, massively important. Same for basketball. If you want to get a point guard on campus, how can he run an offense? How does he fit into what you want to do? So you're right. And we all have our opinions on the recruiting world. I certainly have mine. I'm not a fan of all that, but it makes, like you said, it makes for a fascinating several weeks here coming up for football first and foremost, and quarterback first and foremost, but also for every sport, and just seeing those kids in person again.
There's some guys, every school has their guys that they would probably take a commitment from even without seeing them. And I would imagine for Nebraska, one of them's down in Hayes, Kansas, with Jaron Kenick, who's could play either side of Nebraska's interested in him in either side of the ball. So Jaron Kenick, some of you probably know the name, some may not. He's 6'2", 210. He and his best friend Gavin Myers are both Power 5 prospects in Hayes, Kansas, which is like 5,000 person town. So two in one class in Hayes, which is pretty cool. Kenick, when I talked to him earlier this spring, he had just run 10.67 in the 100 at 210 pounds. Moving. And he was like, yeah, that was my first track meet of my high school career. And I was like, how is that possible?
What?
Yeah. Like, did you just decide to run track? And he said, no, I love track, but he had injuries that held him out his entire 8th grade spring and freshman spring. And then his sophomore spring track got canceled because of COVID. So he went out there, the first track meet he's ever run in high school, and ran 10.67. And then yesterday or a couple days ago, he ran 10.37 in the 100. The video is
I saw somebody on Twitter, I think, pointed out that that's the same time that DK Metcalf, the Seattle Seahawks receiver, ran at the U.S. trials.
It would have been 9th in the Olympic trials. So that's moving.
That's moving.
I didn't see an indication of what the wind was doing or whatever, but it doesn't matter because
doesn't matter. You're running 10.37 in high school, and it doesn't matter if you're 210 pounds or 150 pounds or whatever. You're booking it. So just a total freak show athlete, and this is a good chance to segue. I think into the Nebraska's been releasing their off-season training this year, and I noticed it looks like one came out right as we were getting started here. The squat and hang clean came out today, and just glancing down the list, I see Cam Jurgens squatted 723 pounds,
just like you do, right?
Just like I do, Mr. Jackson, the former Navy SEAL, squatted 644. He had the most points in their strength index. Damian Jackson, hang clean 385, squatted 644. So he had a little over 1,100 points in Nebraska's system. Cam Jurgens, hang clean 405, squatted 723. Phelan Sanford makes another appearance on the list. Deontay Williams makes another appearance on the list. Chris Kolarovich and Cam Taylor-Britt on there as well. So
it's a pretty steady group of, all of the performance and strength index numbers like Kolarovic, Deontay Williams, Jurgens, and Phelan Sanford. I think we're on all of them in the top 10 for all of them. And Cam Taylor-Britt was for all but one, maybe. So
I think JoJo Doman's been right there.
Yep.
Other than this one, I think he's been on all of them. So you kind of had an idea probably going into it who some of the names were going to be. Like you knew JoJo Doman was a pretty freaky athlete. You knew Cam Jurgens was a pretty freaky athlete, Cam Taylor-Britt. But there's always those guys, and this even goes back to the old days when they would release these numbers under Tom Osborne and Boyd Epley. And you have a guy like Phelan Sanford come strolling in off the ranch out in Bankelman and throw up 500 in the squat or whatever.
Phelan Sanford's a perfectly legitimate storyline to talk about on May 14th, in part because I don't want to make too big a deal out of testing numbers, but in addition to the testing numbers, he was running with the number 2s at corner during the spring game. Now that's in part because they've had injuries at corner. Nadab Joseph didn't play because of an injury. Taman Lynam was out most of the spring with an injury. Marquise Buford, the freshman, missed all of spring with an injury, and they've got Malik Williams coming in this summer. So that room has some depth issues at the moment, but he did a nice job of taking advantage of those opportunities. So it was Cam Taylor-Britt and Quentin Newsom as we expected on the red, and then the starting corners for the white were Braxton Clark and Phelan Sanford. And Sanford was one of those guys who you don't think about when you think about the guys who are going to be like core special teams players for Nebraska. He might not be the first guy you think of, but he he appeared on special teams the last 5 games of last year. He's got an interesting route to Nebraska. Not only is he a Bankelman kid who was at Dundee Stratton High School and won 6 track stake titles there overall, but then he went to Hastings for his freshman year. So he wasn't even a Nebraska walk-on right out of high school. He went to Hastings for a year and then transferred to UNL. So he's got a very quintessentially Nebraska route to being not only one of the top performers in their strength and performance index testing, but a guy who, some way, shape, or form is going to be on the field at some point this fall. Probably mostly special teams, but you never know. You run into some depth issues at corner, and he's not all that far down the list at this point.
Yeah, well, and those testing things can probably tell you a lot about who's going to be on special teams, right?
Yeah, probably.
You've got a guy like Phelan Sanford who is obviously strong, can run, agile, can do all the things athletically that you need a guy to do on special teams without having to put, Cam Taylor-Britt out there on special teams, for example, or whoever it may be. He's in a similar athletic category, not the same, of course, but similar to what a Cam Taylor-Britt or a Deontay Williams. And that just gives you depth. And he's a Nebraska kid. So, he's going to go out there and run down the field with his hair on fire, same as,
he's got plenty of hair to be on fire too.
Well, that's true. He's got great hair. We saw a video of him throwing a calf into the chute today too on Twitter. He tweeted out some of that, and
it just couldn't be more. It just couldn't be more. Couldn't be more perfect, could he?
It was beautiful because Phelan Sanford tweets out this video. He's in the muddy corral and grabs the calf and chucks it down the chute, and then a little while later, here comes Cam Jurgens in the Wranglers and the cowboy boots doing a slide protection, trying to get a steer to go back into the pen the other way and moving him back and forth. So it's just if it's almost like this stuff is coordinated with an NIL potentially thing happen and a athletic department that supports that. So I mean, it's
the
just
hype
funny.
Train is off the tracks now that we've had 2 farm videos on the same day.
It's careening through the pasture at this point with all the farm videos coming out. So no, but it's just funny to see it because you're right. Like obviously we know Cam Jurgens is like a freak athlete. We know, and then get a kid like this, Phelan Stanford, maybe he goes down and causes a fumble. Maybe he's like the next Luke Reimer, who caused a fumble in his first kickoff, wasn't it, at Colorado?
Yep.
First time he got on the field. So maybe you find a kid like that a diamond in the rough. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at football wise. It's quiet until June, and we're salivating over testing numbers right now. It feels good to get back to normal.
That's great.
A little bit in that regard. Any other football stuff we need to cover here before we move on and yell about baseball?
The next segue is this, guys putting up impressive numbers. I sent you the screenshot this morning that Baseball America has had an updated top 400 draft prospects that I was scrolling through this morning, and Spencer Schwellenbach had risen from number 151 in their last rankings to number 70 this time around. So that's
a 3rd round draft pick if you're scoring at home.
Yeah, that's pushing toward the end of the second, right?
Pushing into the second.
Picks work.
Yeah, with supplemental picks and stuff like that, I suppose. Yeah, it's into the second, into the 3rd round. So it's hilarious. And I texted you back. Like it just struck me as funny a couple months ago. Will Bolt's like, oh yeah, there's no way he's coming back next year. And you kind of went, huh? And you're like, oh yeah, he's really good. Yeah. So no, and like it's to the point now where he's so good that you almost take it for granted a little bit. Like he's going to come in and throw 95 on the mound after he plays 7 or 8 innings at shortstop and probably throws like 3 dudes out on impossible plays across the diamond from deep in the hole. And then last week, of course, goes over and plays first base and has the perfect relay throw home to save the game against Rutgers. Like he's just go ahead.
I was thinking about that play, like how, I don't know what, probably he would tell you that nothing went through his mind, but I imagine there's like this like split second of panic if you're Will Bolt and you're watching your star player who's got 52 pitches, high leverage pitches on his arm.
Yeah.
Taking that relay and getting ready to uncork it home. Like that's I mean, he's out there, he's out there putting it on the line though. That's the thing. I mean, you love to see it. That's just I don't want to say it's a dangerous play, but like when I saw you tweet about the relay throw home, I was like, oh, the guy who just pitched 4 innings.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's like, that's baseball too, right? Like you knew like the second that Schwellenbach trotted over to first, he was probably going to be in the middle of something, whether it was
ball's going to find you.
The ball always finds you. And that's why Will Bolt puts him out there, right? Like Will Bolt hasn't been shy about saying that, yeah, Spencer Schwellenbach's our best player. Like, and he's special. He's a great, he's all this. Speaking of hype trains, like Will Bolt's been driving the Spencer Schwellenbach hype train. And, when he was talking about it in the preseason, he's been on the mound, he's out, lights out. We're kind of going, okay, yeah, like we've heard this before. Then that first time he comes out and you just go, whoa.
97, yeah.
97 down at Purdue, and you're just going, holy crap. Like Will Bolt wasn't lying. And
he's like Nebraska's Shohei Ohtani.
He seriously is. He seriously is. And like, he's a freak. Like he's as good a player as Nebraska's had in a long time. Probably going back to the mid 2000s, when Nebraska was regularly competing in regionals, super regionals, having a chance to go to College World Series. He's that he's that type of guy. Like he's a foundational piece. And Will Bolt loves guys like that, right? Like he loves guys that want to be in the middle of it, that want the ball, that want to be at first base after they pitch and play short and have to make that relay throw home. Like that's what Spencer Schwellenbach is. And that's what a lot of those guys on that team are. But Spencer Schwellenbach just happens to have like top 2 or 3 round talent.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking about a potential Big Ten Player of the Year. You're talking about a potential national John Olerud Award winner, which goes to the top 2-way player in the country every year. I think the trophy is just like a bronze batting helmet that you wear like when you're playing first base, like John Olerud used to do. Look up John Olerud, kids, all you young kids.
Come on, kids. John Olerud.
Toronto Blue Jays, look it up. But no, he's just a special player. And like you talk to him and like, he's just one of those guys when you talk to him, you can tell he's a dude. Like, it's just, oh yeah, I want the ball. I want to be out there. I want to be in that spot and I want to be that guy. So yeah, he'll be long gone next year and he's going to get paid a lot of money to play baseball and good for him. He's a special player. And
he might get to go on the road to play in an NCAA regional before his time at Nebraska's up.
Yeah, his last game at Nebraska will be May 30th, whether he wants it to be or not. The NCAA announced today there are 20 preliminary host sites for regionals, and they'll whittle that down to 16 on May 31st when they announce the NCAA tournament field. They're doing it differently this year, of course. With COVID, they wanted to announce these sites a few weeks ahead of time so you can have all your testing protocols in place and things like that and be ready to go. And Nebraska put in a bid last month. Will Bolt talked about it. And at the time, I think they were 20-7 and starting to get ranked and starting to get national attention. You're thinking, okay, well, Nebraska might be back in the business of hosting regionals, which they haven't done since 2008. And we're going, man, that'd be awesome. A regional at Haymarket Park in June. Like, weather's going to be warm. They'll have great crowds. And this is awesome. And Nebraska kept winning. And then Rutgers came to town and swept in 3 games. And all of a sudden that went out the window. And you start looking at the teams that are in this preliminary list, 7 SEC teams. Of course, that's no surprise. That was always going to happen. 3 Big 12, 3 Pac-12, I think 3 ACC, 2 or 3 ACC, and then some others sprinkled in there as well. And the one common thread among all these 20 schools is that they have all played non-conference games. And
what do you know?
What do you know? And if you'll recall, the Big Ten said, we are not allowing our schools to play non-conference games this year. They will play a conference-only schedule. So what that means is not only is Nebraska not going to host, that means Michigan isn't going to host. That means Indiana isn't going to host, or Iowa or Maryland. And that means your Big Ten champions at best going to be a 2 seed probably and playing on the road through this whole thing, because the super regional sites are going to come from these 20 preliminary sites too. So you're talking about a power conference, one of the most powerful conferences in the country, sending its league champion on the road for the entirety of sending all the teams that qualify for the NCAA tournament on the road for the entirety of the NCAA tournament. And
that's nice.
That's nice. And it's just, look, it's a long, how much how much the no non-conference played into this, who knows, but you start digging into it and you realize it probably had something to do with it, because look, Nebraska couldn't go play, Southern Miss, for example, who they couldn't go play Gonzaga, who's a host. And if you look at Gonzaga's non-conference, they did, they did what, Nebraska or Michigan or somebody else would have loved to do. They went down and played TCU at TCU, who's probably going to be the number 2 national seed, and took 2 or 3 from TCU. They proved it. They beat Kansas State. They beat Oregon State. They beat Washington, who made the CWS in 2019. They beat Washington State. They went on the road and beat all these teams. Louisiana Tech, same thing. Had a strong non-conference. East Carolina's 33-10, has beaten North Carolina a couple times this year. They proved themselves in the non-conference. And yes, these teams have gaudy records. You can throw Charlotte in there, Louisiana Tech, Pittsburgh. These teams have been good in their leagues, but they've also proved it outside of the conference too. And that makes what happened today for Nebraska, certainly, and for the other schools in the league, it makes it sting that much more, because everybody knew when this schedule was announced, that was the first thing out of everybody's mouth. Well, they're they're screwed because they're not playing non-conference games. They're not playing midweeks. And now look, now you're seeing the result of that. There's no Big Ten teams hosting. And, Nebraska, Michigan, Indiana are all going to have to go on the road and try and do it.
Yeah, it's tough because it's the non-conference thing. I mean, obviously it gives you a chance to build your own resume, but it also helps put in perspective other things that happen over the course of the season. Like if Rutgers puts together, I mean, Rutgers has been tough this year in the Big Ten. If they put together a nice non-conference season like that, getting swept is still by Rutgers at home is still going to be damaging to your resume, no doubt about it. But it might be slightly less damaging had Rutgers put together a non-conference schedule or record like it appears they would have been capable of doing, given how they played.
Rutgers goes
so it's like, it's your own resume, and it builds in context for other things that happen over the course of league play.
Yeah, and if Rutgers goes and plays UConn, who's traditionally a strong team in the Northeast, and picks 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 from them, that makes it look different, and now you're talking about not only are you not hosting, but let's say Nebraska finishes third in the Big Ten, third or fourth. They win 28, 29 games, whatever it may be. You're sweating come May 31st. You might not even get in, and you're going to be 28 and 16, 29 and 15. The only guarantee the Big Ten has right now is that their league champions getting in, and that's it. And you start looking down the RPIs of the schools in contention. Michigan's isn't good. Nebraska's is in the 80s right now, I believe. Indiana's is low, and so if you're looking at the third or fourth place team in the Big Ten, and you're comparing them to the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th place team in the ACC or the Pac-12 or the SEC or the Big 12, who are you taking? You're taking the team that played non-conference, or are you taking the team that finished third in its league and didn't play anybody else? So it shows you how fine the line is for Nebraska. And it shows you too how kind of short-sighted this decision from the NCAA was, because you're announcing these sites with 3 weeks left in the year. And who's to say Nebraska doesn't go out? They still play Michigan 3 times and play Indiana twice, plus this weekend against Northwestern. Who's to say Nebraska doesn't go, I don't know, wins 10 games down the stretch, finishes 33-11. And no chance to host, but they got hot at the end of the year. Now you're going down to Fayetteville to play Arkansas, or going down to TCU or whoever it may be, and you don't even have an opportunity to host, even though you're hot at the end of the year, which is what happened in 2005. Basically, Nebraska got hot at the end of the year, hosted a regional, hosted a super regional, went to the CWS. So it hurts the Big Ten in so many different ways. And and Will Bolt will be the first to tell you, well, we just got to take care of ourselves, and we just got to win games, and that starts tonight, of course, with Northwestern. So you win enough games, it doesn't matter. But if you don't, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on these 3 games, the 4 games next week, and the 3 games home in Michigan to end the year, because the margin for error is basically 0 unless you're going to win the league championship. So, fun times. Good luck.
Right.
Good luck, Nebraska. Good luck, Michigan. Good luck, Indiana.
It's like being a Big Sky Hoops team.
Yeah, exactly. And look, let's be fair. Like, most projections have 3 Big Ten teams getting in, but we all know what projections mean too. At the end of the day, we don't know what the NCAA committee is going to decide.
Especially given, there's 3 Big Ten teams in the projections, but it's not like the NCAA is the one putting out those projections. The NCAA clearly didn't think much of the Big Ten's candidates to host regionals. So who's to say that line of thinking doesn't extend to how they think about the field in general? And
now you're talking about, we mentioned Nebraska, Indiana, Michigan, all 3 play each other down the stretch here. Indiana's at Michigan this weekend. What if all those 3 teams just beat up on each other and they all go 3-3 against each other, however the numbers work out? Then what? Then where are you at? Nobody really gained any ground or anything. So it's just maybe it'll be like the midseason add to the awards watch list or something. Like they'll stick Michigan on, like, oh, guy's got 50 catches 6 games into the year, he should probably be on the Biletnikoff list. Like, someone gets hot and sorry guys, it's 21. Oh yeah. Oh, Michigan's won 12 in a row. We'll throw them in there. We'll make them the 14 seed. So
I doubt it.
No. Yeah, it won't happen. It's a tough spot. It is what it is. I'm sure if you got Will Bolt and staff behind closed doors, they'd be happy to share their feelings about how they think it went. but they'll fight the good fight, and they'll tell their guys, look, we got to worry about tonight against Northwestern, and then we got to worry about tomorrow, and then we got to worry about Sunday, and then we'll worry about next week. And winning solves a lot. Winning solves a lot of problems. If Nebraska keeps winning, they'll be fine. But at the end of the day, like we said, the only guarantee is if you win the league. So, I mean, that's goal number one for Nebraska right now, and that's what makes all these games just so hugely important down the stretch. So there's some baseball talk for you. How about that?
How about that?
We talk about
this is a baseball podcast now.
This is a baseball podcast. You want to talk about the Brewers or anything? No? Nothing to talk about?
There's no offense to speak of, so it'd just be about
the offense is offensive, you might say. We won't talk about
the Brewers trio of starting pitchers, and they just lost 2 of 3 to the Cardinals. 3 starting pitchers combined for 19 2/3, 2 earned runs, 9 hits,
2 earned runs,
2 earned runs, 1 walk, 9 hits, 2 walks over 19 innings, 27 strikeouts, and they lost the series. So
God,
they had 2 different starter. Well, actually, that's not true. Freddie Peralta pitched 7 innings of 1 hit ball, and then Corbin Burns was 5 in his first start back in 2 weeks with 1 hit and 9 strikeouts, or 4 hits and 9 strikeouts, and they lost both. So that's great.
Yeah, Matt Harvey. Is it Matt Harvey, the Mets ace? No, not Matt Harvey.
DeGrom. Yeah,
Jacob DeGrom. He can relate to that.
Corbin Burns is at 1.71 or something ERA for the year, with 59 strikeouts and 1 walk, and he's 2-4.
God.
In the 4 games he's lost, he's lost 4 times this year, and Milwaukee scored a grand total of 1 run in those 4.
Oh God! All right. Well, there's your Brewers.
Not bitter at all. There's the baseball talk.
Yeah. Well, we'll finish this thing off with a little hoops. Bryce McGowan's the 5-star recruit, younger brother of Trey McGowan's, coming in this summer. He'll be here in a month, probably a little less. Played in the Iverson Classic last weekend, kind of an all-star showcase. One of the big ones this summer, as everything else kind of got put on hold by COVID and everything else. And I think had a pretty solid weekend. He finished second in the 3-point shooting contest. Didn't get many minutes, had 6 points in 6 minutes in the actual game. So he was efficient. But you start reading some of the analysis to come out of that, and he really helped himself. Showed some impressive abilities offensively, showed a decent amount defensively. Obviously, there's work that you can do there, but he was not out of place playing with the best players in the country. We're talking, Chet Holmgren, the number 1 recruit in the country, Paulo Banchero. All the big names were there.
Love me some Paulo Banchero.
It's a great name. It's the best name. The top 2 players this year had great names with Chet and Paulo Banchero. So, but yeah, I mean, look, Bryce McGowan's fit in with those dudes. It wasn't like he was swimming in the deep water or anything like that. Like this is a legit talent coming in, and a guy that's really going to help Nebraska in some form or another, whether that's starting right away, whatever it may be. He's going to play a lot this year. So I think that was really encouraging. And certainly Fred Hoiberg and Matt Abdelmassih knew what kind of talent they had there. They scout and they do all the work on that. But I think to see it proven on that stage, even in limited minutes, it shows you that they got a guy. And it's going to be, I think, really interesting to see how he fits in here.
It's so interesting to read like the Jonathan Gavonis of the world, and like a guy who's not on campus yet. I mean, this is the way of the world in basketball with guys like this, but Nebraska just hasn't had one. It's so interesting that the guy's never, I mean, he gets to campus this summer. He's never worn a Nebraska uniform in a game before. And all of the analysis you read about him is through the NBA lens already.
Yeah.
It's like, here's the professional prospects. Like the guy hasn't even played in college yet. That's obviously that's life in hoops. But I was reading it and I was like, oh yeah, they're talking about him like in terms of the NBA, not.
Well, I saw someplace had him as a first round pick, like the 15th pick in the 2023 draft. So think about that. Kid that's never played here might be the highest NBA draft pick Nebraska's ever had if things keep trending the way they are. So we'll see. Got to get here. Got to stay healthy. Got to do all those things. But yeah, it looks like Nebraska's got a guy. I'll pass on one more basketball story. We were talking about this before we came on. This is pretty funny.
Yes.
Wilhelm Breidenbach, the 6'9" forward from
the big
California.
goggle.
The big goggle, BG, is no longer 6'9". He is now 6'11". How did he grow 2 inches, you ask? Well, he went to a chiropractor, or he's been seeing a chiropractor, seeing a doctor. He's got a little bit of a hunch in his back, and the doctor's been working with him and getting him straightened out. And now when he stands up straight, he's 6'11". So Nebraska's adding a 6'11" forward instead of a 6'9" forward who can handle the ball, shoot the three, pass, do all the things Fred Hoiberg wants to do. So I thought that was just a funny little anecdote.
Wasn't Hoiberg talking about him as being able to like run the point?
Yeah, he was asked when we talked to him last, who's going to be your point guard. He said, well, we have Trey McGowans, we have Kobe Webster, this, that, the other thing. Oh, we could have Wilhelm Breidenbach bring the ball up too. He's been doing that for his high school team in California. And we all kind of went, oh, the 6'9" forward who's playing point guard for his high school team in California right now. So I say right now, yes, now 6'11". I say now because California's playing their basketball season in the spring. So Wilhelm's in the middle of his senior season of high school ball. So once he'll finish that in the next couple of weeks, then pretty much come straight to Nebraska and dive right in. So just I think a fascinating, this roster is like so interesting to me. Like there's just so many high level guys on it, I think. And what does that mean for the Big Ten? Who knows? But there's going to be some competition in practice, and there's going to be some intriguing guys, and we'll see what it looks like come November, end of November, beginning of December. So there you go.
I'm going to go make a chiropractor appointment. Hopefully that'll be 6 foot by the time summer's over.
There you go. You got to get stretched out for the summer months to come. Yeah, exactly. So maybe I'll join you. Maybe I can get to 6 foot too. My fellow sub 6 footer. So
you keep dreaming.
We'll keep dreaming. You can wish in one hand and what in the other, and see which one fills up first. So on that note, we're going to wrap this baby up. We'll talk to you guys next week. It'll be me and Sipple next week. So this podcast may or may not get recorded next week. We'll see. I'm not real sure yet, but until then, we'll talk to you guys soon.